All right, Adam.
What's up, guys? Hola.
Hey, Dan. How's it going, man?
Everybody
Jump right
doing?
into it.
Yeah, looks okay.
Yeah. How's Chile?
Chile's good. No, we're bueno. Gracias. Chile's good. That's our hospitality manager, Julio, just making sure the lighting's okay, right?
Yeah. You're good, man.
Cool. I'm just in the dining room here at Koiki River Lodge, a beautiful dining room. The guests are finishing up dessert and cocktails on the porch. So you might hear some birds and some glasses going, but we're busy. We just got a new guest group in today. Had a busy Friday night last night, and so yeah, should be good.
Awesome, man. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some hoppers, man. So what are conditions like down there right now?
Yeah, so this season we've had really low water. There wasn't much snowpack, not much snow last winter, and I got into country December 27th, and we've had maybe one day of rain. So rivers are low.
Okay.
But the grasshoppers, the saltamontes, there's been a lot of them this year. It's been really good. We're still able, to access the boats with not too much difficulty, but we could desperately use some rain. The snow is pretty much gone in the mountains.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And where we sit right here at the lodge is about, what's that?
Sorry, go for it.
I said where we sit at the lodge here is about 3,400 feet above sea level. So, the mountains here could be 7 or so, and there's definitely no snow up there right now. I would relate it to Montana this time of year right now. Like Montana in August is what February is in Patagonia.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you for that. So I'm going to jump right into tying this Fat Albert. And so Adam, like kind of as I start this, I was kind of hoping to like kind of talk to you about some of the things that we incorporate into these flies.
Yeah, for sure.
So for on this fly, what I do is I do like the UTC like underbody, and you can just see I'm just making like a smooth underbody here. Do you have a preference on what you use for underbodies on your foam hoppers?
No, I don't. Most of my stuff comes from you, Jay, the handmade angler. I don't. There's 3 main things, and we'll probably go through them in the questions that I look for in when I'm guiding with grasshopper patterns or hoppers. Durability, flotation, and viz, right? So if we're talking about the underbody, the durability, I'm just looking for something that's super durable, that we could pull out of the willows, and it doesn't have a lot of maintenance. And then after that, I'm also looking for something that like won't come apart. Wild trout have sharp teeth, and not like pike or muskie, but they do. And you chew up these foam bugs. Just looking for something that's durable.
Yeah. Well, this particular Fat Albert's pretty durable, just because there's so many like wraps back and forth. You saw me wrap all the way down the shank and then back up, and then now I'm gonna wrap this piece of foam in the whole length of the shank.
Yeah. Fat Albert is a great pattern. We use it here often, particularly if I'm looking for something, like I said, that it's not a heavy maintenance fly, meaning that I could have my clients mend it or sink it or twitch it, and it pops right back up. I don't have to dry it out. I could dip it in, liquid Flyagra or whatever you guys like to use, and let it sit overnight, and that really helps for the next day.
Do you find that you tend to like a thinner or a thicker foam, or do you like to have multiple pieces of thinner stuff to make your bulkiness, or how do you like to?
I guess it depends on what size fly I'm tying. It doesn't, multiple layers is good. We're not hanging super heavy nymphs if we do dry droppers, so it's just something that's durable.
Nice, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, we might be on a little bit of delay. Sorry about that, man. Down here so far south.
I can't believe this is actually working. This is pretty awesome, man. So
yeah.
So I tie in that, so I've got the underbody, which is the thread. I have 2 millimeter foam here, which is going to be like the underbody, and then this tan foam is going to be over the top. And then I just kind of make my segments. You know, Adam, you talk about the durability of these flies, and what's pretty neat, what kind of comes to mind for me is, you know, they look really fun and kind of, they have this real sex appeal to them, but they're not that hard to tie,
right?
Which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, it's super easy to tie. I think they're fun to tie. You know, people who like tying, you know, saltwater flies because they're super, you know, imitating a crab or something like that, or big musky flies are real sexy right now. You know, foam bugs are super fun to tie. They're not very hard. It doesn't have to be spot on. You know, a lot of the stuff just looks like a cartoon that we're fishing. You know, some of it is more realistic, but in a place like this where the fish, you know, are going, you don't really have to be super. You don't have to look exactly like a grasshopper.
Sure. That makes sense. Yeah, I tend to, you know, stuff gets more and more realistic as the season goes on. And then, so these are just a pair of rubber legs that I just throw some knots in to give that kind of knotted leg effect. Adam, what's your opinion on the knotted leg? Do you think you need it? Do you think you don't need it? What do you think?
I don't think you really need it. I think the fishermen like it. It looks cooler, it looks neater, it looks cleaner, but I mean, it doesn't, I don't think it really has much effect. I do think that the leg movement is important. Some kind of movement, especially if you're, you know, a lot of times you'll have the fly that they would want to eat and they're not going to eat it until they twitch it, you know, and as soon as you twitch it, the fish will come over for sure. We saw that yesterday. We were fishing at Alpine Lake. And I remember one time this season on the Simpson, the Rio Simpson is one of our home, probably the most famous river closest to us. And I was fishing one of your Gypsy Kings. It's a confidence fly for me down here. And sure enough, I would twitch it and the fish came in over and actively fed on it. And when I would dead drift it, they wouldn't even look at it. So I do think the leg movement is important.
Cool. So how are these fish set up then? Are they like kind of in like feeding lanes off of hopper banks, like in like grassy banks, that kind of stuff, or are you kind of fishing more mid-river, or like kind of both, or?
A little bit of everything, especially now with the low water. What we're finding is the fish are in the heavy, fast riffles, super heavy riffles. But there's a lot of willows along that overgrow the banks here, as opposed to just the grass bank. And the fish, you know, a lot of, depending on the river, the fish are suspended underneath those willows, and so, you know, accuracy sometimes could be challenging. That's why durability is important on the willows. We do have spring creeks where they set up traditional, like traditional spring creek fish, you know. And also what I think is important that we were finding the other day is the inside turn. Like if you're in a run, that inside turn at the very, very top, fish that flat water. We've got plenty of fish in that flat water. So yeah, just a little bit of all over. Certainly this time of year with the water being so low, they're in the heavy stuff. So, you know, big chubby Chernobyl, you know, a big one coming right down the heaviest wave. They'll come up and eat that sometimes for sure.
Cool. So you can see how I put, you know, your favorite, or what you tell me is your go-to cider color on here, which is the pink McFly-on, which is just like a polypropylene yarn. Pink's your go-to, so that's your best color for anglers to see and for you to see. Do you work with any other colors for different light conditions?
For sure. I've always, over time, I've just felt that pink was the most high vis for people to see under all conditions. If it's a little bit, you know, if it's bright sun and there's no glare on the water, white. You know, if I were to pick, you know, an indicator color, it's either going to be white or pink. Just I feel like that, you know, the pink is the best under low light conditions for me, under glare for me, and then if it's no glare, I'll just go white.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. That bug looks pretty good.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
trim up this leg here a little bit.
I think one of the important things about the Fat Albert particularly is the splat, right? We're not, unlike the Delaware where I guide, we're not gently presenting these flies. That splat on the water that, you know, really helps the fish key into it. Particularly because most of the times when we're feeding these fish or trying to get these fish to eat, we're not casting above them. We're either casting to the side of them or just slightly behind them, and they'll turn down and eat that hopper. Typically, if you try and present it to it like a dry fly, they'll nose up to it and then sort of use it or turn off. Not all the time, but a lot of times, you know, we're trying to get the angler to cast to the side or slightly down on the fish and make that splat. The brown or rainbow usually turns around in that case.
Oh, cool. So they're like looking for that intrusion into the water.
For sure. These fish are keyed in on surface activity this time of year. And when the grasshoppers is their biggest source of protein besides, you know, bait fish and sculpins and whatnot. But yeah, they're surface oriented. They're surface activity. Yeah.
So, obviously this time of year, I mean, this year for you guys, you know, low conditions will bring super clear water. Are you trying to tone down the amount of flash that you have in your flies for these conditions, or are you in an area where it's not really it doesn't really matter?
Doesn't really matter so much, I don't think. You know, we've had very little streamer fishing, for instance, and the sparkle minnow was probably my best streamer this year in low clear water. But as far as hoppers, I don't think it matters. There's certainly times where I won't use a Fat Albert or a chubby Chernobyl, like you know, that inside bend that I'm talking about, that flatter water that's moving. I might use a more natural bug with a little bit less foam, like a Gypsy King, or a new pattern that you're going to show here in a little bit. That's when I might switch to a more natural hopper, natural hopper. Yeah.
So less flash. So,
yeah.
Are you cutting the back end of your crystal flash tags off of your chubby Chernobyls right now, or?
No. I think that's important because if a fish looks at the grasshopper, its wings are going to be iridescent. You know, again, there's so much else, other things to catch their eye. But I think, you know, that little crystal flash, it could be a trigger point. And if it could be, why not leave it on? These fish are very forgiving, and I feel so lucky to be here because, you know, we had one day, I haven't been posting a lot because there's a lot more anglers out there and a lot of people are just copying spots and stuff like that. So I haven't been posting a lot or talking about where we've been fishing just because I'm not trying to expose our fisheries more than people already know about them. But there was a time on the Rio Simpson on this stretch that we were fishing last week, and we were on a beautiful fish, and it refused the hopper because it was dragging, right? And they will eat it on the drag, but this particular fish didn't. And it was a bigger fish, you know, 23, 24-inch rainbow. And so we put it over again, and it refused it. And then we started switching. You know, people that fish with me know I say don't panic a lot. And so I started panicking, and I was switching bugs out way too fast. And so I put on the purple haze, nothing, the parachute Adams behind the hopper, the original hopper, and it ate the original hopper, you know. So these fish are pretty forgiving, you know. I mean, it's like, you know, you could do a lot wrong to them and still catch them.
Yeah, that's great, man. That's great. Awesome.
Hey, Cliff, how you doing, buddy?
So I'm gonna tie this next fly, and then I've got another color variation I can do on that Fat Albert, and probably call it, you know, I'll call it good after that.
Yeah. You got to come up with a name with this one. It worked pretty good early season on some of the smaller streams. I did some videos. I think I sent you one.
So yeah, I don't know. This is kind of like, you know, it's kind of in that like Gypsy King, Gould's Half Down kind of family.
Yeah.
And I fish this kind of stuff a lot just because it's super, I don't know, subtle, and it, you know, rides more in the film than high riders do. So basically I take this 200 Tiemco 200R hook, and this is a pretty big hook. This is a size 6. Just, you know, I probably wouldn't fish something this big here, but
I'll fish it down here.
But yeah, down there.
Yeah, I do, and I do. It works good.
Yeah. I remember the size 4s I tied you last year, and I was like, "Holy cow!"
Yeah, those big size 4 Gypsy Kings, those work pretty good, man. Like
so massive, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, you talk about confidence color. You know, purple has always been a confidence color for me, also. And do you have other like go-to color combinations that you like to try to just as like searching patterns, or when you need that like that confidence fly in the mix?
Yeah, purple and black, particularly on the fly, like these kind of flies, not necessarily on a Fat Albert, but like a Gypsy King or less foam flies, let's call them. Red and black is always pretty darn good. You know, more tan than olive, I think.
Okay.
You know, some of these more realistics, like I have one right here. I don't know if people can see it or not, but this is a pretty realistic hopper here.
Oh yeah, the
this
Moorish, is that the Moorish one?
Yep. I'm not sure, you know, but I use this often. It might be the Moorish one, but I like this in the tan. I'd probably pick the tan more than the olive. I just don't have any left right now, so that's why I had this in my box as a demonstration.
Sure.
Another confidence color and/or pattern is one called the panty dropper. You know, that orange has been good for us. But yeah, so probably if I'm a searching pattern with a big, you know, if there's not a ton of hoppers, I'm gonna go probably purple and black for me down here.
Sure.
I got a ton of confidence in the Gypsy King. It's a pattern that my buddy Matt told me about down here, that he guides at the lodge with us, and it's worked. I've caught a lot of good fish in my 3 years down here. So that's probably my biggest number one searching fly is the purple-legged Gypsy King.
Okay.
Yeah.
Follow that up. I don't know why my head right here. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about the differences in water that you fish. Your heavier or your bigger, brighter, foamy flies compared to your lower riders.
Yeah. So you know, the bigger, heavier water. Typically, like I was saying in the riffles, heavy riffles. I'm busting out chubby Chernobyls, big ones. Bigger Fat Alberts, PMXs, you know, stuff that will really drum up a fish from the bottom.
Sure, all those flies throw a really big silhouette.
And they float high, which is important. Again, you know, we're talking about my 3 main factors that I look for is viz, durability, and flotation. So flotation, they're great. You know, I usually we figure out sort of an idea where we're going the night before, and I'll usually fly agra all my flies, but the night before that I've been planning on doing. And then when I get to the river, most of these flies have some sort of a wing, whether it's, here's a Fat Albert that Jay tied for me in the past, whether it's a wing like the one he just demonstrated, or PMX. I'll get in there with the brush. The dry shake is important too, or this PMX here. I'll get in there with that brush and really brush it out, even though I already fly aggregate the night before.
Sure.
And then keep my dry shake throughout the day. So those in the heavy stuff, you know, I'm throwing the bigger foam where the fish are right now because of the low hot summer water.
Right.
Yeah. And as far as go ahead.
No, go for it.
As far as durability and maintenance and all that, I'm just really looking for something that I don't have to mess with a lot throughout the day, right? If I have a fly that is staying buoyant and that my guests could fish, I want to just not even mess with it as much as I can, right? So whether they're bouncing it off rocks or, you know, mending their line, I want the fly to pop back up. You know, and some of these flies, it's a little bit harder to do that. Like this one that Jay's tying here, you can do it, but after a while it gets saturated and waterlogged. So depending on where I'm going, you know, I might have multiple patterns dipped up, but then the river always changes, right? So it's not like, okay, you know, there's grasshoppers everywhere, but what we found the other day, on one of the rivers is they weren't eating like grasshopper looking flies, they were eating black Fat Alberts, which looks like grasshopper, but it's not tan or green, it's black, you know, and there wasn't any black grasshoppers in it, you know, it looks more like a beetle. So
Yeah, meeting the fish where they're at, right?
Yeah, yeah. But you know, again, we're pretty lucky here. The fish are pretty unspoiled. We don't see a lot of pressure, and we don't want them to see pressure, right? We want those happy fish suspended. That's what people come down to Patagonia so they can catch those fish on those big dries.
Yeah.
And so yeah. Again, heavy riffles and runs. You know, chubby. If I'm fishing a little bit flatter water, I'll go to a Moorish hopper or something, you know, Gypsy King or something like that. That's not as flashy.
So those Gypsy Kings, I'm just thinking about your list of criteria that you're looking for flies.
Mm-hmm.
They're not like that, you know, they don't have like any high vis on them or anything. Would you want yours with like a little pink cider on them in the future?
So the wing that you put on them, and this is a pattern that Jay tied. Almost all my dry flies that I use in Chile are tied by the handmade angler, Jay. This wing, that's why I sort of do all that prep work as far as flotation stuff before. You know, dip the whole thing and let it sit overnight. You know, and then get in there with the brush. And even if I'm rowing through a riffle, I'm asking my guests, like, really get in there and brush this thing out. Like, get in there and get it so it's all brushed out and splayed out. And it's pretty hard to miss this on the water. People do, but
Sure.
but it's got some good viz to it. It's more of a maintenance fly, but that's why I try and go through the process of dipping it and letting it sit longer. The Flyagro or whatever liquid dip you use, if you let it sit overnight, you could do it the same time. It doesn't be as effective, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it makes
so, you know, let it.
Like
yep.
A slick right on the water with the Flyagro stuff if you don't let them dry.
Yeah.
And I treat all your flies with you know, watershed.
Right.
You know, so they're, you know, you're getting like
they're pretty bomb proof, yeah, and all this stuff people could do, and you know, if they're tying at home, but inevitably they're going to sink at some point because you have to mend your line, or I want you to twitch the fly, but it usually pops back up. Now, if I have a big dropper on, you know, so for us, like, you know, a big girdle bug, you know, we'll fish underneath a hopper because it looks like a sunken hopper, and you'd be surprised how many times you'll eat a sunken hopper.
Well, I got questions about that too. So
yeah. So that's one thing that actually one of my buddies that I got with in Alaska, Nate, is down here for his first season. We were talking about it in our guide meeting in the morning, and he was talking to Matt, and they were like, "Well, man, they probably take it as a sunken hopper," and I was like, "Well, shoot, that makes sense." So that's been pretty good for us. But yeah, the Gypsy King can support smaller flies, but it won't be, you know, it's not like a chubby that could support, you know, an anchor, you know.
Right, totally. I just broke my thread. I got to reattach it, so.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. So do you have like any kind of sunken hopper patterns that you have been playing around with, or?
No, I don't. The ones that we're fishing get sunk pretty regularly.
Fair enough.
So yeah, so that works. But no, I don't. If anybody does or has any more ideas, I'd be interested to hear them. But no, I don't have one that this is my sunken hopper pattern.
Sure. Right. Yeah. So I'm just going to kind of walk through what I did on this fly so far. So I started my thread about 25% of the way back from the eye of the hook, even underbody. And then I direct dubbed, and then I put in my ribbing, and then I direct dubbed this body all the way back up to about 3/4 of the way. Wrap my rib forward, which is this insane like Mylar or Krelex flash.
Yep.
I threw in this this underwing. This is like a web wing. This stuff here, and I just cut that. Either I trace it out and trim it with scissors, or I cut it with my press cutter, and then I do this deer hair wing over the top of it. And I use one of those Primo strips.
Do you have a press cutter a company that is there only a couple? Do you have one you prefer?
Yeah, I just use the River Roads. They're out of Stevensville, Montana. and then I have a fly tie for bass called the Pad Racer, and they made a cutter for me for that. So
Nice.
they make good stuff, as long as you don't like. I mean, they make good stuff. It's, you know, usually your abuse that breaks it, because it's like you drop them or whatever, they get dull, that kind of thing.
Right.
So then I'm gonna put this foam in, and I'm just gonna wrap this forward. And this is gonna be like my foam bullet head. I'm gonna fold back.
Like I was saying, this fly that Jay tied, he's still in the naming process. Worked for me early season, so for me that was last week in December. That'd be like the beginning of June, let's say, or beginning of July, let's say, back in the Rockies. We were on a spring creek, first pool, multiple fish on it. It was sort of an overcast, sort of cloudy day. I don't think that mattered too much, obviously, but that pattern definitely worked, and it was a new one that he was willing to let me use. It works good.
Oh yeah, I love catching fish on. I love you catching fish on flies that I've tied.
Me too, man. That means less time for me. Yep. More Dolbeck. This is a local brewery here we usually go to, but with COVID. So.
Right on. So what I'm doing now is I just put in like an ice stub, like dubbing ball, basically. And I don't know, I want to hear your opinions on this too, Adam, but I often try and, like, even if the fly is all going to be the same color, to have a contrast from the abdomen to the thorax. So I think on these versions of the versions of this fly that I sent to you, I think I used like iced up black or iced up peacock or something up front, just to kind of like, I think it adds to like the segmentation, and I think it adds to like the realism of the fly. But I'd love to hear what your opinions are on like contrast in the body.
Contrast is important. Everything has shadows and color change. You know, everything in nature has some kind of color change and or a shadow at different time, or some kind of camouflage that helps it hide or pop out in the wrong light. So I'm big on contrast. It could be outside the same color scheme, right? So if you have like purple and blue, and then all of a sudden you go fluorescent orange, that could be a trigger. But yeah, not always. But yeah, contrast is important, I think, for sure. Everything in nature has contrast in its color.
Totally.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of one of the ways that I kind of tackle it. And I think it's important. You know, I think I was reading. You know, Schwiebert talks a lot about contrast in his books, if you're into those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So what I just did is I just threw on, you know, I folded this foam back, put the wings on, or the legs on. So now I have like 2 per side. And I like, the reason I went with that is because I really want these things to move. And I want these things to like, I want to have this fly to have some inherent movement without, you know, having to twitch it and having to mend it and that kind of thing.
Sure.
But you know, whatever. And then what I'll do is I'll just whip finish it right here.
No, I think that's important. And one of the things that, like, you know, the all foam flies, like a Fat Albert or a panty dropper, they have legs on them, but there's not a ton of movement on that fly, right? So
right.
I'm a big movement guy too, and if the fly could swim, or I call it, let the fly breathe. People hear me say it a lot. Let the fly breathe. If the fly could breathe on its own, whether it's a hopper or a streamer, that's what, in my opinion, that's what fish are looking for. That life movement of the fly without your fly line moving, right? So a hopper, instead of twitching it, you got the rubber legs. A streamer, let the fly breathe. After you strip it, you got to let it recover, or you know, you could burn them too, but I always have better success letting that fly breathe and come back to life, and oftentimes that's when I get my strike.
Totally. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So, and I love tying that Gypsy King so much that I just needed to kind of throw a variation on it, you know?
I like it. One of the things I like about this pattern too is if you are to pop it or twitch it underwater, it goes a little bit deeper because of that bullet, right? So it could be, sure, you know, it could work as a sunken-ish, but then also pop back up. It rides a little bit lower, so if fish aren't super happy to come all the way out of the water, if they're just sipping or something like that, I feel like that fly that Jay has right there. It gives them a little more confidence to come and get it. And you could tie it in other colors, sure, right? You know, Jay.
Yeah.
You know, Jay and I were talking. I like purple and black. You know, you could tie it all in tan. You could tie it in red and black.
Totally. And like, what I like about this particular fly too is that it really rides that attractor zone well. Like you can fish it as a hopper, or you can fish it as a stone fly. You can even throw like an egg sac on the back of this, and fish it as like an egg layer. You know, so it's pretty.
You could tie it like a salmon fly for people that fish the salmon fly hatches, right?
Totally, or golden
stone fly. Yeah. So no, I agree with all
that. Sweet, man.
Yeah.
Anything else? So I had questions about like, you know, we talked about like legs like being knotted and that kind of thing. But what do you think about like multiple colored legs, like the legs contrasting themselves and then the legs contrasting against the body of the fly?
I think all of it could work in certain situations. You know, typically if I got here, here's a chubby that Jay tied for me. It's red and black. It's used a little bit, so you have to excuse me, but it's red and black, and then it's got red legs. You know, you could use black legs on that too. I probably wouldn't contrast that too much. You know, put like yellow on there or something.
Sure.
But if you have like a black fly, an all black chubby, let's say, and put yellow legs on it, yeah, absolutely. Contrasting on the same pattern, I think, you know, if you have red legs on your hopper, like in the back, and then put tan on the sides, that'd be cool. I feel like it might be a trigger point for the fish. But the contrasting or the mixing of the same two colors, I don't really have an opinion. You know, if they're eating it, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, you know, if you're tying a bunch of them, you have a pack of whatever out already, you know. Yeah. But and then
if you're tying a bunch and you just have the materials out, you might as well just. I mean, we're fishing foam hoppers, you know. I mean, you get as crazy as you want, right? But
right, yeah.
It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, fishing's fun, man. And if it's not, you should be a different sport.
Yeah.
I got one more. So, Adam, I use a lot of just silicone legs on the flies that I tie for you and for the flies that I tie for myself in general. But I also will use sexy floss sometimes so for certain patterns that I do tie for around here. Do you find that there's a difference in that kind of action, like in those leg actions?
I like the silicone better. I feel it's more lifelike and less rigid. I have used flexi floss in like my girdle bugs, but I like the round sort of silicone-y. It doesn't have to be barred, although the barred looks better to the fisherman.
Sure.
But yeah, I like that. I feel like it has more of that splat appeal too. It's a little bit denser, you know, depending on what size you use. And it flows, I feel like, better in the water. Some of the flexi floss or other brands, they're great. I use them, but I don't feel like have that as much lifelike movement as your silicone ones you tie for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when I tie flies for you, it's like we're in such communication about what you're actually looking for that it's tied what you're looking for. So I just was, just curious what your opinions on the, flexi floss.
Oh, no, that's a great question. And so, yeah, that's why I like it for the splat appeal, and I feel like it's more lifelike.
Sure. Do you, in terms of natural materials for hoppers, do you have any that can kind of fit those category for you in terms of durability and visibility?
Deer hair, certainly.
Like bullet head kind of format, or?
Yeah, sort of. Not as the bullet heads can be good, but if they get brittle after a while, like this fly right here, I got one right here just on my patch. I mean, it's still a fish, but it just doesn't look as good. But as far as natural materials, deer hair wings, certainly, although they can get brittle. I feel like those are, as far as their visibility and durability, are great. You know, a lot of these are tied, or some of my flies are tied by Jay. They're all tied by Jay, but some of them are tied with peacock curl. So, you know, that's pretty brittle, right? But if you throw in a dubbing loop and then twist them, right, it's going to make it more durable. Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
But I don't use a whole lot of bullet head flies. I like the cartoony stuff. It just looks cooler, man. I mean, we're in Patagonia. Throw something cool, you know?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I used to fish a lot of bullet head hoppers, and I love them, but they do, like, take abuse, you know?
Yeah. And the other day, actually, we were using one of my guests had one here, and it outfished the foam stuff. There's definitely days where the natural hoppers are more effective than the big foam flies, for sure. Even down here. Like a Dave's hopper, right? I think that's a natural hopper.
Yeah, that's got clip hair.
Yeah. So and that there's definitely days where that's more effective, particularly on the spring creeks right now with them being so low and spooky. You know, the foam, that splat sometimes will spook them. As crazy as it sounds, because the grasshopper lands, it's heavy, it makes noise. But yeah, there's definitely days where the foam is not as good as the natural hopper.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough, man. Well, I mean, I could walk us through another Fat Albert. I can kind of give more of an instruction to that if you'd like, or.
Yeah, go for it, man. One of the things I want to take a minute here, if it's okay,
Yeah, do.
I got a lot of friends and family in Florida, and Jay and I were talking about this earlier. If you know, it's pretty bad about pushing this 2508 through last minute. You know, Jay and I both being professional guides and feeding our families as guides, we definitely feel for you guys. Like I said, I got a lot of friends that I guide with throughout the year that are from Florida, that work in Florida. I have family in Florida. I just hope we take better care of our resources. It's not a political thing. I don't care who you vote for, but we just need to take better care of our resources and make smart decisions. So yeah, we're looking out for you guys. Well, we're trying to look out for you guys. We feel for you guys. And if you're not familiar with what we're talking about, you can certainly Google it. I think like Captains for Clean Water has a lot of information about this new issue that's going on down there. So yeah, thanks, Jay.
Yeah, man, I'm stoked. Yeah, please. So I cut like my top piece, which is like twice as long as my bottom piece, but I still use that chubby Chernobyl cutter as kind of my guide.
Yeah.
Well, you can even see the notch here. So like I just cut this end and then I trim out this side. And that just gives me a working length to do this whole thing. And then if I tie this underbody, or if I wrap this in for the entire length of the underbody, it adds a ton of durability and an even underbody, and it helps keep it super buoyant.
And I think that's important as far as flotation and durability. If you could put, you know, even if you're tying a natural fly, if you could tie a piece of foam on the shank first and then wrap the peacock curl or whatever, it's going to make the fly more buoyant.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to take this all the way back down the bend just slightly. And I'm trying to do I'm trying to do pretty good at like making this pretty even, but you know, doesn't have to be perfect because you're going to still go over this another time.
Right. And again, you know, nothing is, I mean, you can certainly make your flies look pretty, but sometimes the flies that aren't exact fish better.
Right. I wonder why that is.
I don't know, but I know particularly on the Delaware, you know, my best dry flies aren't pristinely tied. And I feel like I do pretty well up there. So.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can see how I tied in that top piece of foam, and that becomes my under foam. And basically I stop that thread right behind the hook point.
Yeah.
And that's going to be my first segment. I kind of angle that foam towards me so that thread torque kind of carries it around and I don't fold over that little kink right here. I hate when that edge folds. It makes me uncomfortable. So anyway, I try to get rid of it. And then I'll do like 3 kind of even segments. And, you know, I don't know about you, Adam, but like, you know, one of the things that I like about the foam bugs is that, you know, there's still some movement in there. So like,
Yeah.
you know, the foam, like, you know, sometimes it like kind of like pushes over or whatever. You just kind of have to move it back in. But I think if we were to like lock that down super tight with like glue and all kinds of shit, then it would like, it wouldn't act as well.
Right. No, I agree.
So then when I take this piece, I just kind of like fold it over, and I don't want to stretch it super tight. I just want it to be kind of a natural, you know, thickness there. So I just kind of like gently do this one, and then I draw it down. You know, the thing with foam that I like to throw out to people too is that if you hammer on this stuff, you can start cutting through that foam piece, and that's lame. So don't do that.
So how do you prevent from doing that? Do you untwist your thread a little bit when you're wrapping, or?
If I can, but I just, you know, it's like more of like just a tension feel thing. You know,
Right.
you screw up a couple and then you figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I just got like my McFly on here. And, you know, this stuff is cheap. So cut yourself a nice long section so you can work with it.
So you can see it.
Yeah, and you can see it.
It's tough. We started on this riffle the other day, and I had to go to like a bigger size chubby than I wanted to, just because the glare was so bad for my guys. But it ended up working.
Right on.
Yeah.
So then what I do for this top piece is I just kind of line it up with the back end of that third segment, and then I'll just kind of hold that in place with my fingernail. And again, I kind of torque all that towards me so I don't get that weird crease right there.
Yeah.
Okay. And then these knotted legs, you know, when I knot these, I kind of cinch these knots down pretty tight. And that way they don't come undone on the water. But you can throw a dash of glue on there if you want to, or, you know, you probably don't even need to knot them, but I do.
Yeah.
So basically I want that knot to be like right at the back of the foam body here. And what I'll do is I'll just kind of like hold those into place right on top of the fly, a couple of wraps just to hold them in kind of loosely, and then I'll kind of drag them into position.
And I imagine what Jay does too is if he's production tying, he's going to go through and get all of his legs knotted up first.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I'll cut all of my legs, like all my front legs. I'll cut all the foam.
Yeah.
I'll do all that stuff. And not only like, you know, from a production standpoint, yeah, that makes the most sense. But if you're looking even to tie flies to fill your box, like tying them in that production kind of way gets you really good. I'm blanking on the word, but the only word that comes to mind is like, you know, repetition. Like you get a lot, like each fly looks the same. And then once you know how to make that fly look that way, then you can start tweaking with it.
Be able to get good consistency with your
consistency. That was the word, man. I don't know why I just blanked on that, but
you're good, man. You're good.
So now I just kind of wrap that shank up to right behind the hook eye. Give myself maybe a half a hook eye or maybe a little less behind the hook eye. And then each one of these wraps is I'm like kind of drawing it over in like even tension, and then I'm kind of drawing it down. And the more thread you put on there, the more forgiving the foam is going to be against thread cuts. Again, I'm going to take these front legs, I'm going to lay them just right on top. 3 wraps, why not? I'm going to bring them down so they're lined up on that middle piece of foam. Okay. And I'm going to hold all this stuff back. And I'm going to build like a little thread dam right there at like whatever angle, that 45-degree angle or whatever. And what that's going to do is that's going to like force that foam back against those thread wraps behind it and really lock it down.
Yep.
And we'll do 2 sets of those. Why not? Just throw a little head cement on there. Some guys like will throw UV resin on there or whatever. I don't really do that. I don't think it's necessary for this fly. But Adam, do you use UV on your?
I don't use UV a whole lot. I use Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails or Gorilla Glue, you know.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you like. I just don't. I mean, I carry so much stuff with me. I don't need to carry a flashlight to tie a fly, you know.
Totally. So Adam, usually on these tags, I do about half the back of this abdomen section.
Yep.
Does that work for you, or you need them longer?
Yeah, that works. That works great. And I think this, you know, you're talking about contrast. You know, you could certainly make them longer. But yeah, that works great. And what I like about it there is it gives me enough room to really dust it up, and it will splay out after a while and look good. You know, this fly right here, this Fat Albert, is a pretty indestructible pattern if tied properly. It's probably pretty hard to tear apart.
Yeah.
Looks
So
awesome.
I like to tie them with like that 2 mil foam. Have you played around with 3 mil or?
I haven't. No. The 2 mil is good. And is there a particular brand you use or?
I've just been ordering stuff from Nature's Spirit recently, but it doesn't.
Nice.
Yeah, I just bought like a big blue sheet of blue at, you know, Michael's Crafts or whatever for some damsel flies I'm tying up soon. Thanks.
Nice.
Thanks, Cliff.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Boom.
Well, one of the things when I was jumping on and talking to one of our guests here at the lodge, one of the guys I fished with back on the East Coast, he's here this week, and he was saying he was tying for this trip and he didn't find a lot of instructional videos on some of the flies that I had on his list. If you guys have questions, you know, or looking for instruction, I know Jay does that stuff, and you'll be able to reach out to him and he'll just be able to see what kind of schedule he has and availability. But he knows how to tie a lot of this stuff. He's done it for me for a number of years now, or a couple of years now. And he knows the patterns and is easy to instruct.
Yeah,
I'm not overselling you, Jay, but there was just a question that came up right before this. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you know, the Gypsy King fly was a really hard pattern to track down in terms of learning how to tie it. Yeah. And yeah, I do a lot of tying instruction. I love it. So hit me up.
Yep. You can check out his website or I'm sure he does DMs and stuff.
Yeah,
like that.
you can direct message me. You can check out my website, send me a contact me thing, or go to my website. My phone number's there. Give me a call.
Cool.
So basically, I just tie in one strand of this, and this. Did you like this piece of it? This piece of flash in here, or?
Yeah, I did. I think the one, if I'm not, I think one of the ones you gave me had black.
Do I have black? Yeah, that might be.
It went over the purple. That's just that contrast. It looks segmented. But yeah, I like the flash for sure. I'm not opposed to flash. On these big bugs, it's always a little bit of flash. I don't think hurts.
Cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would dig around for the black stuff, but I don't know where that is, and
just to throwing out an idea, if you know.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
And then there's a little bit of UV in this purple dry fly dubbing from Montana Fly Company, and I really like that.
Nice. One of the things that the wind here is unbelievable. It's the windiest place I guide for a long time, and I think a lot of people underestimate it, even though I say it a lot. So people ask, okay, well, how do you fish these bigger flies? I think if you don't have a 7-weight to fish grasshoppers, you might be a little undergunned in some spots, not just here, but other places too. It's just a great all-around rod. Why not have one? A 5 and a 6 is great, but the wind here, I'm telling you, is brutal. You need a bigger rod to turn over these bigger flies. So my ideal setup, if it's a windy day, like I'm pretty sure I know where I'm going tomorrow, and I'm going to 6s or 7s for dry droppers, and 7.5-foot leaders. I'm probably going to fish, start with 2X tomorrow. But I like the 7.5-foot because it turns over. Again, these fish typically aren't leader shy. If they are, it's on the Simpson or during a hatch, and we can go to a 9-foot leader, no problem.
Sure. So what are you using for leaders for these, Adam? In those heavy
I use the Rio PowerFlex tapered leaders, the 7.5-footers. But I use that almost all the time, except for my technical stuff on the Delaware, I'll go to 12 or 15 foot leaders. The reason I like the 7.5 foot leaders is because I fish dry flies with fluorocarbon. The fish can't see it. It does not sink these flies. It does not sink my small dry flies. It doesn't. It's more expensive, yes, but if it gives you an advantage where the fish can't see it as easily, why not give yourself the advantage? Fishing's hard enough as it is.
Totally.
So yeah, 7.5 foot tapered leaders is typically what I use.
And then
Anywhere from 0 to 3x. 3x would be on the really light side, and a lot of times.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fish a lot of those 7.5, 3x leaders, kind of my go-to, but I'm always stepping it out to, you know, a 9'5" or 6 liter, you know, for my water.
Yeah. Well, you could always build off that and build yourself a 9 foot leader, no problem.
Yeah,
you know?
Totally. It's really nice to have that kind of flexibility.
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to throw in that web wing here.
And like Jay was saying, this hook shank and design and the way he ties it allows this to sit lower in the water, which is important under a lot of conditions. You know, particularly on flatter water, you know, something that just sits a little bit lower in the meniscus it can be really good.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of those film flies, you know, in general. So the trickiest part about this fly is the deer hair wing, because deer hair, or hair in general, you just have to have enough experience with it to kind of get the right amount.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, then it's muscle memory to like be able to figure out how to pinch the right amount out. And it can be frustrating to work with, especially when you drop all your stuff. But for this wing, I'm going to put my stack in tip first to kind of line up those stacks. And what's nice about these Primo deer strips is that they there's like natural barring that will happen once you straighten out these tips. Okay. And then I'll tie it in like stimulator style. So you kind of measure out the wing and you cut the butts to the right length. And then pinch wrap that on top. If my under wing got torqued over a little bit. And then if you got too much hair on there, it's just going to go to the bottom of the hook shank, and you can just clean that up with some trimming with the scissors after the fly is done. But I want to make sure this wing's in there solid, so I'm going to go right through those butts. Where's that foam? Well, Adam, I think we're going to put a tan head on this one.
Yeah, I like it. And you can tie them tan too, you know, if you know, maybe a yellow dubbing body. Yeah, we've had some good success this season on pink, pink hoppers. Yeah, there's one out at my buddy Nate's from Wisconsin, so he's using the hippie stomper and he's tying it in tan and pink, and it's working pretty good for him.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. You know, I had one season on the upper Blackfoot that the pink and I think it was pink and gray Chernobyl like crushed it.
Yeah, it could be good. Sometimes I'll fish an all pink hopper. So.
Okay, so this is looking pretty sloppy right now, but we're gonna tighten this up here.
It's okay. It'll work out.
The you know, the direct dubbing technique kind of kills my soul a little bit, but it actually works really well on this fly, so I kind of do it.
Maybe people don't know what that is, Jay.
Oh. Basically when you spin the dubbing on the thread, and you got to make sure you go in one direction. I like to use a lot of dubbing loops, which is makes things more durable, and you can kind of get kind of a different effect that I like a little more.
Yeah.
So then what I do is I kind of pull this head foam over the top here. There's that evil little fold. All right, that came out. And now I'm going to add my legs. So basically, this is like one of those silicone leg strip there. And then what I'll do is just cut these in half.
Is there a particular size you're using for that fly?
I think this one's medium. I think these are mediums.
Yeah.
So basically, I took those 2 strands, I cut them in half, so now I have 4 lengths here. Kind of 3 loose wraps just to kind of hold everything in place. I'm going to pull those off to the side. Tighten that down. We'll finish over the top of these. Spin it. That is ugly. All right, and then what I want to do is I want to just make this a little, give it a little appeal. So I'll do like a 45-degree angle cut there. And a cut there to kind of give it like a triangle on top. And then you can kind of see how ugly it is underneath here. We can just trim that up a little bit. Really expose that body.
He doesn't have a name for this fly yet. That's a great question. It's just, we just started using it. He sent me some down at the beginning of this season. Not sure what your plan is, Jay, with these. Are you going to be, the question was, what was your name for it? I know you don't have one yet, but
I don't know. I was playing around with that earlier today, and I was kind of thinking like, the grave of the unknown hopper or something.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to be disrespectful, so.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It's one of those things that'll come to you in time. I mean, it's still a new pattern for him. He's been fishing it a little bit more now, and I've been fishing it down here, but it's still pretty new. So it's one of those things. I'm a big believer. It's going to come to you one of these times.
Yeah, I think it will be like when we're chatting or something, and it'll be like, oh yeah, that's going to be it. So.
Or when you get a big fish on it or something. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, those are some of the stuff we've been working on. We've only got a couple minutes left, Adam. I think we should, wrap it up. But
I would fish that fly on the Delaware during the stone flies in different color schemes. I do fish stimulators there. I'm usually gone to Alaska by that time, but yes, in the summertime. Or on a pond or a lake, if you're a lake fisherman and there's dragonflies around, it'd be a great one for that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good, man. I think it's
great. So I appreciate you having me on and setting this up. I'm going to get going here because we only have 2 minutes left and we got a full house of guests.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, have a great week, man, and let's be in touch soon. And
for sure.
let me know how I can improve these hoppers for you. And if anybody has any questions about tying the bugs or whatever, shoot us a line. Yep.
Yeah, I know Jay's pretty responsive too. I'll do my best. We appreciate everybody coming on, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Jay, I'll be in touch with you, buddy.
Yeah, man. You guys be safe. Thanks.
All right. Yep. Later.